right, good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday AM Mindful Storyteller Circle. My name is Halana Black. I'm the group facilitator for our writing classes every week. This week, we're talking about our childhood food memories. I decided that I wanted to go ahead and to make it easier for me to do classes or to organize classes. I think I wanted to do every month around a particular theme. So today, for the month of September, we'll be doing food. And today we're talking about childhood food memories, which I think is pretty cool because I think there's a lot of stuff that comes up for us to be able to write about when we talk about our childhood food memories. Here comes Miss Kathy.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning or good afternoon where you are.
That's right. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. We always start with just a couple of minutes of settling in with our meditation, and I always turn the video off for this portion, just to be able to ground us into the session and where we are, and we can leave behind whatever it is that we came with, whether it's fatigue, whether you had other meetings going on, any other thoughts that are not useful to what it is that we're doing now. Just sort of sit quietly for a moment and breathe normally. You can close your eyes or just sort of gently lower your gaze. You can sit, I like to sit with my legs folded, but if it's easier for where you're sitting at the moment, you can also just sort of let both of your feet hang with the bottom of your feet on the floor as well. And as you sit for a moment, if you can just start to feel the energy drop from the top of your head all the way down the back of your spine. Can feel your neck relax. Your shoulders drop. Relax your back muscles. All the way down to the base of your spine. And then on your own, you can just sort of take 3 deep cleansing breaths. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Give your neck a good stretch. And when you all are ready, we can come back. All right. So today we're talking about our food memories. As I said before, I want to do themed months So we're talking about food for the month, and today we're talking about childhood food memories. And I think one of the reasons that I really like journaling as a way to be able to sort of start off our writing is because we can never really know what it is that we really want to be able to write. It just sort of comes out how it wants to be able to come out, and journaling is a really nice way for us to be able to discover um, the different types of stories that we have within us to be able to share with people. So we're talking about childhood food memories because I realize that there's a lot of things that or at least for myself, I kind of forget as time goes by. And I need a prompt or something to be able to bring them up, whether they're good memories or bad memories or indifferent memories. It's good to be able to express those things on paper. Good morning, Christine. Good to
Good
have you.
morning, good morning. Good morning, lady.
She's so energetic. I love your energy, Christine. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
So yeah, we're doing childhood food memories. So the way I wanted to break this down is there's I have three different ways for us to be able to look at our childhood food memories. There are many, but of course our time is limited. Um, and so when we want to write about our food memories, we can sort of think about one thing is the most obvious, which is the sort of the smell, the taste, the texture, the appearance of the food. And so one of the things that I thought about first, which I put in the email, was the bacon grease and the Alaga syrup that my great grandmother used to give me when I was a kid. I remember looking at it in her basement pantry when we would pass through, and that was just a staple of breakfast of eating it. Whenever I would eat breakfast with her, that was what she would have with biscuits in the morning. You know, some people have butter and jam or jelly or, whatever it is that you would eat with your food. She would make biscuits. Sometimes it would be fresh biscuits. Um, Bacon was always a big thing because she would get it fresh from the butcher. She's probably the last of of people that I ever knew that actually went to a butcher until I went abroad and realized that people in other countries did that all the time. For my parents and myself, we always just went to a regular grocery store. But there was definitely a generation of people who would go in the United States before food was just processed half to death. And you would just go to a butcher. You can actually tell the butcher what type of what cut of the animal you wanted, how much of it you wanted. Now you can only do that with like deli meat, which is so processed. It's sort of sad. But the Alaga syrup was just really a big deal because I realized that not a lot of people ate it unless they had Southern roots. And I looked up, I'm a big ingredient person. I looked up the ingredients. The ingredients were not healthy. It was just corn syrup, cane syrup, maybe I don't think it had coloring in it. But it was mostly just cane syrup and corn syrup, which are not things that I would eat today. But the taste was so unique in and of I posted it up and my uncle posted it. He was like, "Yeah, I remember that alligator syrup. It was delicious." So it didn't taste like maple syrup and it didn't taste like a log cabin syrup, or the other pancake syrups and all that other stuff. It was like somewhere in between. It was really thick. Um, I don't know. I loved it. My great grandmother also, she would make, chitlins during the holidays. Chitlins has a very, you could smell chitlins down the block when chitlins are being cooked. And if people don't know who are watching the replay, if you don't know what chitlins are, it's the pig intestines, that are cleaned a certain way. but even when you cook them, they still have a certain smell, and I couldn't take them. I don't think I've ever eaten them. Um, and then there's, of course, I thought of freshly baked oatmeal raisin cookies that my mom used to make when I was little, and I really loved those. And I remember when she would make them, and she would, hand them to me and on a little white napkin, and it had so much butter and brown sugar and cinnamon in it, and it would make like a little imprint on the white napkin that she would give to me, and you can just sort of smell, the butter and all sorts of other things that she would put in the cookies, and they were so soft and chewy, and they were delicious. My mom was a really good baker. So those are the types of things that you can think about if you want to journal about smell, taste, texture, and appearance when you think about your food. So the journaling question that I have for us this morning is, what's your earliest food memory and what about it stands out the most? And you can reference smell, taste, texture, and appearance if you care to in the question. What's your earliest food memory and what about it stands out the most? I'll put it in the chat so people can see it. Where is it? Okay, I didn't realize I was on mute. But if anyone wants to share what they've written, or if you just want to give a general sharing, that's fine too. I'd love to hear it.
I'll share.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for me, it was something that both my mother and my grandmother made. So the only grandmother I knew was on my father's side. So both sides of my family made hot water cornbread. And it was my absolute favorite. It was usually served with something spicy and wet. So like either collard greens and hot sauce, tomatoes and onions, or neck bones and black eyed peas with hot sauce. Like always something wet, something you could dip. And it was crunchy, hot. It was the last thing. I think it's still my favorite thing. I love hot water cornbread. And I think it was also very, I don't know, it felt very nostalgic to come to places like Mexico and they have like sopes, which is always reminds me of hot water cornbread, or Colombia, and they make I can't remember the name, arepas. It reminds me of hot water cornbread. Like in my travels to see something that's like, oh, this corn thing really like this was
It's a thing.
like this is a thing. So yeah, that was very just, yeah, that's my thing. Hot water cornbread.
I love hot water cornbread.
Me too.
Me too. I'll share behind tissue because I have I was going to talk about something else, but you mentioned hot water cornbread, and I made a complete U-turn. Because I still make hot water cornbread. I still cook it, but I remember a lot of people don't make it like my family made it growing up. It was cooked in the pot with the greens, like dumplings. They looked like dumplings. And so growing up, we used to eat greens until my mother decided differently, um, with your hands. So you would take the hot water cornbread and you would smash it and you had the greens in a bowl, and that's what you ate was the greens, the tomatoes, the green onions, the scallions. They call them scallions now, but the green onions, or just slice it in the tomato, vinegar, hot sauce, whatever you want to put, and you would eat it. And it reminds me, never been to Africa, but it reminds me, I have African friends who eat with their hands like this. There are a lot of people, indigenous people I've just seen watching TV or whatever, the types of food that they eat are like this. That's the real early memory, and that's a texture thing. That's a smell thing, and you could smell greens. It's like, who cooking greens? Even to this day, who's cooking greens? And you got to be careful whose greens you use. Certain people's greens you like to eat, and you cook them the same. I still cook greens on a regular basis. My favorites are collards. I still make hot water cornbread very, very rarely, but only when like a family member, all my relatives are gone now, but if my mother or father asked me to make it, I would make it. Sometimes if my daughter asked to make it, but that's how you used to eat it. And then so thank you, Tishy, for that memory. That was a really early memory. I was trying to remember the earliest one, and the other one was around holidays and the smell of barbecue, anticipating like that sweet, sticky barbecue sauce, and juxtapositioned against like the cold potato salad and that kind of stuff. I would look forward to that, and that triggered like really happy times because we always celebrated summer holidays, 4th of July, Memorial Day, that kind of thing outside. We didn't have a backyard. We know when you had to pack up all that crap and take it to the park and with thousands of other families. So those are really good memories. But thank you for that, Tishy. I didn't think about that. So it's a trip to the grocery store. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share.
Yes, Kathy.
Thanks for that cornbread. I mean, hot water cornbread. That actually made me hungry. I'm hungry now. Uh, I got hungry, also, writing about this. I'll read what I wrote. If warmth had a smell, it would be of butter, salt, and flour mixed together, forming a crusty, soft, circular pillow on a sunny day. When bitten into the pillowy shape, sphere, crumbs were sweet with a hint of tanginess. This was my grandmother's biscuits, served with subs or honey. And subs were my cousins who would come over hungry and say, Nana, where's the biscuits and subs? And talking about syrup.
Oh, okay.
This is in Texas. And these were the hungry cousins. I was so we had some hungry cousins who would come over. She would call for them to come over because their mother was my uncle's children, and their mother were not together. And so she was always putting together food and everything. But on the weekends, she would call and say, bring the children over, and they would come over, and we would have biscuits, and we'd have a full breakfast. But biscuits seemed to be before, during, and after breakfast. And I was the oldest grandchild on my mother's. I am the oldest on my mother's side of the family, and had gotten to know them 2 years after I was born, because I was born in Germany. And so when we came back to the States, that was my first recollection of good food, that my grandmother's food heightened my sense of smell and everything that had to do with food, including bacon. And she made her eggs soft, so they were never stiff, but they were just really good. So those were my memories.
Nice. Now you made me remember my grandmother's eggs with the cracked. She would put some sort of cracked black pepper on it, and I remember the taste of the black pepper in the egg.
Yeah.
It's nice to listen to other people's memories, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. You have your own version of it.
Right. Did any of you ever have? We grew up really quickly. I didn't have bacon like we have bacon today until I was well grown. We had salt pork. It was fried salt pork, and we did have a butcher in our neighborhood, and it was, it was sliced salt pork, and you fried that up, and it was not bacon. It was like you get out the store today. I miss that. It was really good.
Where'd you grow up, Miss Kim?
I grew up here in Chicago on 47th Street.
47th to what?
Michigan.
Oh, okay. I was just curious where the butcher was, just being nosy.
It was a Polish family. There were still, most of where I grew up was Black owned business. It was a Black community. I lived in a completely Black community, except for a few businesses, a cleaners, and then there was the butcher shop. They were one of the last. They were a Polish family, a husband and wife. You can go and they had chickens in the crate. They had, if you want, they would cut the meat. That's where we got our meat. Because my grandmother didn't believe in getting meat out the grocery store in a package. She just thought that was disgusting. So you went to the, but she was the same woman who didn't like washing machines. So she was like, they don't get your clothes. We had a washing board, the washing board with the Fell's Napa soap. Remember that big brown thing of soap? Yeah. So yeah, it was on 47th Street. Going east, it was a Polish family. They stayed there for a long time. I remember them maybe until I got maybe 6 or 7 years old, and then they left the neighborhood. I probably got the times wrong, but I remember them. They were very, very nice people. But that's where we got our meat from. That's where everybody got their meat from, most, as far as I know. You can go in there and you see your neighbors. So you went this place, that place, that place, and you would just tell them what kind of meat you wanted. And we got salt pork,
Nice.
chunk.
Christine, did you want to share?
Yes, yes, yes. My favorite, my earliest memory are banana pancakes.
Banana
Banana pancakes, and we didn't have syrup. We had condensed milk. We used to pour condensed milk on top of it, and the pancakes used to be delicious, soft, greasy. I still remember that, and I tried to make them on Sunday past, but of course they were not. They were nothing like how my grandmother made them. But that's my earliest memory of food, and I loved banana pancakes, and we would get them every Sunday morning with the condensed, lots of condensed milk on top. Of course, children, we like sweets. So that's one of my fondest memories. But I can never recreate those pancakes. I don't know how. Yeah, it's not the same anymore. No matter where I get them from, it's not the same, unfortunately.
That actually sounds really good.
Yeah, yeah. They were really, really nice. And burnt bologna. We'd have banana pancakes and bologna. Yeah. I still like burnt bologna. I like my bologna a little crispy. That's my favorite.
I used to like to watch it curl up,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
get this bubble in the middle, and then you push it
Yes.
down and the air comes. Yeah.
And just like you say, we got it from the butcher shop. So you could tell them how thick you wanted it cut, not the little thin slices that they have packaged now. Nice thick pieces that you fry. So yeah, good memories.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to number 2. So we'll have time to get to the second question. But the second way to think about your food memories is in personal anecdotes or personal stories. So if you have any specific stories surrounding food, like celebrations or things you might eat in quiet moments at family gatherings or whatever like that. So as an example, I remember eating frozen fried chicken warmed up in the oven when I was probably somewhere in my early teens. And I remember we would get this on a Friday. My parents would go to, they were going to marriage counseling. And so this, just sort of placate the children, which is sort of give us the chicken that they would just buy from the grocery store and sort of warm it up in the oven. And I remember the burnt crispy bits of seasoned flour coming off the sides of the chicken that I really loved the most. And I like to get the chicken because it sort of made me forget all the other extra stuff that was going on, all the arguing and all that stuff. The chicken would show up, and I'll be like, "Oh, they're going out. They're gonna leave us with my grandmother." And we would get the chicken, and so it was like it felt it was comforting, and that's probably one of many ways that I learned how to be able to comfort myself with food. Was with this memory of the fried chicken, and I even remember one day they weren't going to marriage counseling. I guess they decided that it wasn't working anyway, so we're just not anymore. And I asked them, and I was concerned about the chicken, to be honest. I was like, are y'all not going to your counseling? And I remember my sister, she's a couple of years younger than me, and she was like, "Shh, don't say anything. Don't say anything about it." I just wanted the chicken. So that's my little personal anecdote or personal story around chicken. Or not chicken, or around childhood food memories. So my question for you, Do you remember cooking or baking with a family member? What dish did you make, and what did you love most about the experience? I'll put it in here. Did you cook or bake with a family member? Family member. What dish did you make? And what did you love most about the experience? Okay. So if anyone wants to share what they've written around personal anecdotes, talking about cooking or baking with a family member, what dish did you make and what did you love most about the experience? Cheryl, you talking?
Yes, my internet is acting a donkey over here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So when I was a little girl, we had this cookbook called Bell's Best. I'll never forget it. But my sister and I always made tea cakes, and we made $1 million pound cake. And what I loved about it was making a mess. I love making a mess in the kitchen, and that was really the only time we had permission to be messy in the kitchen was when we were baking cakes or cookies or whatever. Um, but my favorite part was to sit quietly and wait on that cake to rise because you couldn't run because you would make the cake fall. So that's, as a kid, you're always antsy and wanting to move, but something about that cake and the smell of the cake in the oven, you could sit and you could just, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And you peep and you go check because you don't want to open up the oven and make the cake fall. So those are my favorite with my sister baking.
Mm. That's fun. I remember that peeking into the oven, the little window oven, because you only got like this this much space to be able to see what was going on. That's a fun memory. Would anyone else care to share?
I will. So I know y'all don't think I'm stuck on greens because I am. So one of my favorite earliest memories, well, again, with my grandmother. Um, she had a garden and she grew greens. One of the things that she grew was greens in the city. And she and a couple of these other old senior ladies, because she's always had a garden, but she had her own garden at some point, and she was a maid for a very long time for a family that she would live with up north and then come and stay with us on the weekends. And when she finally retired, she got her own garden, which is what she's always wanted again, because in the South, they had their own garden. So she taught me how to pick and wash greens. And we would do that together. That's how I learned how to cook, was at her hip. And she was a little bitty lady, like 4'9". Um, and she was the most amazing cook. I grew up with a lot of cooks. My mother, my uncles were all cooks, aunts all cooks, cousins all cooks. So I remember that, learning how to wash greens, and the greens that would come out the garden back then, they had little slugs on them. They were dirty. You had to pick them. So you had to pick greens, and then you had to wash them, and then you had to cook them, and you had to season them, and so forth. And when they start smelling, and then the hot water cornbread, and I just love that. And I've got the job, of course, stupid me, like cutting up the onion. This is how you cut an onion. No, do it again. That's too big. I didn't tell you to cut it like that. Cut it like this, right? That kind of stuff. So I learned how to cut onion and do that and so forth. And when it was done, my favorite part though was when everybody would eat. When I loved, and I still love that. It's one of my things that I love about feeding people. They would be like, that, And I said, oh, this is so good. These greens are so good. Everybody love greens. Everybody love greens. Greens are so good, or whatever else. Oh, the mac and cheese, whatever was so good. And I loved waiting on that. I knew it was coming. I loved waiting on that. And I remember that was one of the sources of, one of the sources of, I felt so much pride in helping to prepare food for my family, and everybody loved it and enjoyed it and complimented it. My grandmother never told people that I helped her. And she never said thank you when they said, oh, mama, this big mama, whoever it was that was talking, these are so good. She would just say, eat some more. She would never say, oh, thank you. No, it was just, eat some more, have some more. And that was our love language. I think that's a lot of Black people's love language is food and feeding people. So I'm grateful to her for that she taught me those things, and that made us really close. So she wasn't a big conversationalist. We didn't talk about life and discover life and so forth. Every now and then she would ask me some questions, but I learned how to conduct myself. A lot of what I learned about how to conduct myself as a lady, as a young woman, I learned from her. Just being in the kitchen, and watching her and being meticulous. So I'm grateful for that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna make some greens this weekend. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
I love how you brought her voice to life, because you know, you hear her instructions telling you how to cut. Don't cut it this way, cut it another way. That's not how I showed you. You know, when you say it, I can hear it, and then it's almost like I can see you both in the kitchen at the same time, which is really sweet.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anyone else? One more?
I have
Oh.
one. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
There you go.
I have memories of the only time that I saw my father cooking. And it was usually in the summertime, but it was usually around my birthday and Father's Day. I was actually born on Father's Day. So he would make a big deal of cooking what would be what I call my favorite meal, and that was T-bone steak with a baked potato, and he would make a chocolate cake and some fudge,
Mhm.
because he liked fudge, peanut butter fudge, in fact. And so those were the only times that I was able to see him cook, and he wouldn't allow me to cook with him. He would allow me to watch him. And I learned how to grill and make meat on the barbecue grill because of that. My mother didn't ever grill, but we did. And then he would make my sister her favorite cheeseburger. She didn't like, she didn't like that. And he would make it just the way I liked it. And I would just remember the saltiness of the meat. And then he would leave a little fat on it. And I like, to this day, I don't like, I like the gristle or fat on meat, and for the flavor. And so that's my favorite meal, T-bone steak. And we didn't have it often. It was just kind of something in the summertime. Baked potato, a chocolate cake, and I think my mother would make a salad. And that was my favorite meal. Is probably still. I don't have it often though.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That sounds delicious. I love that. I do, and I remember eating the fatty part. That's probably the best part of a good
Yeah,
piece.
yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I'm so hungry.
Too. I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
All right, I want to move on to the last one, so we'll have enough time to be able to share. So the third thing that you can add to when writing about childhood food memories is its cultural significance in history. Again, there are many others, but these are the three that I'm choosing today. So there are certain foods that often reflect cultural heritage, and when you add those stories, it adds depth and meaning to your food memories. So one of the things that I thought about was okra. I didn't really love okra growing up, but my great grandmother had a small garden in her backyard. She grew everything in that little piece of space that she had. And she was really brilliant at it. I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, but as I've grown older, I can see, like gardening was really her brilliance. And she really loved to be able to have okra. That was just a really important staple for her. And she would have okra the entire summer into the fall for as long as the crop just kept producing okra, and she would make succotash with it. And so I didn't appreciate, I didn't love the succotash or the okra when she made it as a kid. But then when I grew older and I went to the Peace Corps after I graduated from college, and I went to Togo in West Africa. Went to a village way out in the middle of nowhere, and I saw how they used okra and how important it was for them. They literally ate okra every day. Literally ate okra every day. When it was not in season, they had it dried for the year, because of course there's no refrigeration there. There's probably no refrigeration there today too. But they would eat it dried, and in the summer they would make a sauce out of it that was fresh. And there was such a difference in the texture of it. The dried sauce is um, more watery, and then the fresh one was they had the more of the slime in it, which they really enjoyed. And so they would take the corn, they called it lapat. They would take the corn meal and sort of dip it in, kind of like what Kim was talking about, like the dumplings and you sort of put it into the sauce, and you would sort of do like this with it, and then you would pop it in your mouth and you would swallow it. And so I just having that experience sort of was one of the things that sort of connected being an African American with West Africa. That was something that was tangible for me. So I really loved having that experience. So the question is, do you remember a time when you tried a new cultural food for the first time as a kid? What were you eating and what was the experience like? Do you remember a time when you tried a new cultural food for the first time as a kid? What were you eating and what was the experience like? All right, if anyone wants to go ahead and share. See you, Kim. Since we're in the last couple of minutes, would anyone care to share?
Now, quickly, I'll share, my first experience with other food than what my family cooked was, food that Navajo, Native Americans cooked. And it was, what we call now, I guess, fry bread, beef, so-called beef stew, which my parents said because they didn't want us to know it was deer. And Bambi, we were eating Bambi and vegetables too. It was real good. And the fried bread they called, I think Mexicans called it sopapilla, but it was also, but they call it's called fried bread to them. And it was all good. All the vegetables, pumpkin, corn, all the vegetables. That was my first experience. Good memories.
The question was about other cultures.
It doesn't matter. Your culture or another culture, it doesn't matter.
Ah,
I didn't specify.
okay.
Anyone else want to share what you had as remember as a kid trying a new cultural food?
Well, the memory that I have was chitlins. I know that came up. Like I remember the first time I ever had them. I remember that my grandmother was cooking them. I remember it had to have been Christmas. I remember the first time saying, no, I don't want that. And then I guess I always been a little bit adventurous. I'm like, I'm gonna try a little bit. And I remember putting them on on the saucer, right? The littlest amount possible, because you ain't gonna waste no food in my grandmother's house. And I remember preparing them like my grandmother did, with hot sauce and ketchup. And I remember having to force my mind to not think about what I was eating. Um, and like I think this is my first experience with mindfulness. So being very present to the taste and the flavor, like forcing myself to focus on that and not the smell and not pay it. I was like, okay, like this is my first experience with mind over matter, I think. And yeah, the flavor was actually quite nice, right? And so I still didn't like them, but I was committed to still eating them because everybody else ate them. And so I was so committed that I decided to make them one year. And I've only made them once in my life. My mother said they were great, but yeah. So yeah, I had chitlins. And then to travel the world and it's so interesting I think about that now, right? When Miss Kim was talking about eating with the food, and I'm like, everybody eats with their hands, right? Ethiopian, like I think about all the food I've eaten, Nigerian food, Ethiopian food, like all the food, hell, Mexican food. And it just, how it makes me think about as a Black American, how many like cultural things we demonized. And I think about the proximity to our colonizers, right? Like they weren't away and we were allowed to do it. We were right here. So it's like we took on, I think about, how we call so many things slave food. And I'm like, but people around the world eat the whole animal. Like it's not just us. I think I saw a Mexican lady deep frying some chitlins the other day, like in a big ass thing. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive I saw this lady deep frying chitlins. I'm like, it's so interesting how that, all these things that, we don't look kindly upon. It's like Oh, but yeah, no, everybody does this.
Yeah, and it's the truth. Everybody does it. It's just we put values on the certain parts because the so-called better parts went to slave masters, and then we got what was left. But everybody ate the whole thing. You go to
Everybody.
any culture, everybody eats the entire thing. There's no such thing as wasting anything because nobody could afford it.
Yeah, it's also wasteful. Like indigenous people were like the original, like green, eco-friendly, like everybody does because we cared about the earth and we weren't disconnected from our food, right? Like we were connected to where our food came from and the fact that it was food. So yes, hand to food as opposed to inserting something. I'm like, this is such an interesting little thing.
Mhm.
How much colonization and capitalism has created a separation between us and the earth.
Mhm. Absolutely.
The cost of chitlins and other animal parts went up after they found out how good Black people were eating. And my mother used to say, I can't even buy no chitlins anymore. They cost too much. And they would come in a little package. You used to be able to get a whole big old thing,
Bucket.
big
Red
old
Yeah.
bucket.
Mhm.
Red
And
bucket.
yeah, and she would spend all day cleaning those chitlins.
Mhm.
And so then because they started cleaning them, so-called cleaning them and packaging in the way that other people could eat them, the price went up because of all the processing that had to be done. And she was so angry. She and my aunts, they were so mad at the price of chitlins. That was a big discussion. The price of chitlins. So
Absolutely. The price of oxtails, the price of pork chops,
yes,
all the
it,
best parts of the meat.
The
And
price
that's
of
right.
pig
folks
feet,
can't afford them anymore.
pig feet and pigtails, everything's gone up.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yes.
Tripe, the guts.
It's tripe in the guts, everything. All of those parts have always been important, and it's important to every culture. As Tish said, that's important to every culture because people there's no room for waste. If you're going to take the life of an animal, we use all the parts of it. You just don't decide, well, this part is only edible, and then the rest of it we just discard. You use the whole thing. You use the skin, you use the bones, you use everything.
Yeah,
So
it just feels so disrespectful now. Like
mhm.
to waste. It's like, why is that acceptable? I
Mhm.
was watching a video the other day of this guy who does catering and he travels. And I think he charges like $10,000 or something. And the way he sets it up, it just looked like there's grapes in between the platters of food. And I was just looking at all of this food, like, what do you do with all of these grapes? Like you're using actual grapes
Yeah,
to decorate. And I mean, it looks pretty, but on one hand, on the other, I'm like, I know you throw all of it because you've got these huge containers of food, right?
Mhm.
With under the things that are lit and they're warm, the warmers and everything looks beautiful, but you've got actual living, not fake food, living food as decoration. And it just reminded me of, was that Rome? When they would put all these feasts together. And I'm like, it's just so wasteful. Because I know people are not eating all these tons of grapes.
They just throw them out.
That you got thrown, hanging over. Oh, it
That
feels so.
makes me remember when I was in college, they used to have, well, not in college, I was working at a community college and they would cater events and they would have whole leaves of kale to separate the sections. Let me tell you how I showed up with a whole plastic bag and walked around putting this free kale in the bag. I was like, I'm taking all this home. We're not throwing nothing at it. It was perfectly good. I sure did. I sure did put it in the bag. It didn't make no sense.
Yeah, it just really makes me think about how standard and normalized it is to not respect like the fact that this may not be around forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there's this assumption that, oh, we can always get more because we're disconnected, right? Like we don't realize food comes in seasons and the soil quality, like things happen. And it's just like,
Absolutely. There
ooh,
is a season. When that season is broken, oh my God. I learned that in as a Peace Corps volunteer, when you live with farmers and you learn, how you have one bad season and you don't eat for a year. One bad season and these people would not eat for a year. And so, you start to understand why they take all of that stuff so seriously. Why they're, the planting times were so serious, and they, if it was to kill an animal for eating was like a ceremony.
yeah.
And everyone
That's
had a
right.
job. The men would have their part, and then the women would have their part, and nobody got involved in the other person's part. But it was sacred either way. All of those things were very important, because if there's no rain one year, we don't eat out here. There's no grocery store to go to.
Yeah.
And there's money to go out and get, anything else. So that's important.
Yeah.
So, 10
It
minutes
makes it
after
so
the hour.
easy
Yeah.
when you don't feel connected to them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You start to appreciate it in a different way when the grocery store is not available and you don't have any money to go to the grocery store anyway. And that's why it's it's nice to see so many people being interested in learning how to grow their own food again.
Mhm.
Because people are concerned that we might get to a point where we might need them, where we can't go to a grocery store. You might have to depend on yourself and what it is that you've grown in your backyard. So all those things are really important. Let's see. So it's 10 minutes after the hour. Ladies, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate the fact that you all stayed on. Let's see. Next week, I think we're doing market memories is what we'll be talking about. Either, like a farmer's market, or going to a grocery store, food shopping type of memories. So I look forward to that. Thank you all so much for hanging out, and I will see you next week. For people who are watching the recording, you're more than welcome to join in the circle. You can get notice of when we meet. We meet every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern time, as in New York time. And you can just put in your name and email, and you'll be able to get on the email list. And so you'll get all of the updates. So thank you all so much, and I will see you all next week.
Okay, ladies, have a great week.
Bye.
All right,
Take care.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.